history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My
Weather weapons, chemtrails, DARPA, and control. They call me the cigarette smoking man. Some truths are better left buried, some questions best unasked. But the air is different these days, isn't it? Thicker, heavier, pregnant with unspoken anxieties. Look up. What do you see? Contrails? That's what they want you to believe. Harmless vapor from jet engines, dissipating into the vastness of the sky. But I've seen things, things the average citizen wouldn't comprehend, things that would shatter their comfortable reality. Tonight we delve into the realm of whispers, the domain of shadows. We're talking about weather, not the kind Mother Nature cooks up, but the kind cooked up in clandestine laboratories, hatched in the minds of men who believe they can play God. Weather weapons, chemtrails, and the ever-present specter of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, lurking behind it all. Since when did the sky become a canvas for government experimentation? Since when did our freedom extend to altering the very atmosphere we breathe? These aren't just clouds we're seeing, folks. These are lines being drawn, boundaries being crossed, the natural order twisted and manipulated by those who crave control. We'll examine the evidence, connect the dots, and ask the question that no one else dares to. Is this about climate control, population management, or something far more sinister? Are we guinea pigs in a grand global experiment with our consent neither asked nor given? So light up if you got 'em, because this is going to be a long night, a night where we challenge the official narrative and reclaim our right to know what's happening in the skies above. A night where we ask, can we trust those who claim to protect us, or are they the architects of our silent demise? The desire to control the elements, to bend nature to our will, isn't a new phenomenon. It's as old as humanity itself. For millennia, our ancestors looked to the skies, at the capricious dance of sun, wind, and rain, with a mixture of awe and desperation. Welcome back to Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. I'm Stephen Leake. Facing drought, flood, or a season of hardship, they turned to rituals, to dances, to prayers, attempts to appease or influence the forces they couldn't comprehend. The shaman or the medicine man, whispering incantations to coax rain from a dry sky or to calm a raging storm, this was the primal urge to gain mastery over the environment, to secure survival, to impose order on chaos. It was born of necessity, a fundamental aspect of our relationship with Earth. But that was a relationship rooted in respect and understanding our place within the natural order. It was about asking, not demanding. It was about seeking balance, not imposing dominance. There was an inherent humility in those early efforts, a recognition of powers far greater than our own. We were supplicants, not conquerors. Fast forward a few millennia. The tools change, but does the underlying ambition? As science began to unlock the secrets of the atmosphere, the temptation to move from supplication to manipulation grew. The early 20th century, a period of unprecedented technological optimism, saw these ancient desires begin to coalesce with burgeoning scientific understanding. Men like Vincent Schaeffer and Irving Langmuir, pioneers in atmospheric science, started experimenting with ways to influence weather. They looked at dry ice, at silver iodine, at the very particles that could seed a cloud, forcing moisture to coalesce and fall as rain or snow. It was a fascinating frontier, a seemingly benevolent quest to alleviate drought, to provide water for arid lands, to perhaps even quell destructive storms. These early endeavors, like the celebrated Project Cirrus in the late 1940s, were presented as breakthroughs, as triumphs of human ingenuity. They achieved some success in demonstrating the principles of cloud seeding, but even then, buried beneath the scientific jargon and the public relations fanfare were the seeds of something more profound and potentially more dangerous. The ability to make rain, even on a limited scale, opened a Pandora's box of possibilities. If you can make it rain, can you stop it raining elsewhere? If you can seed a cloud, can you seed a storm? The line between benevolent intervention and coercive control began to blur. This ambition, this desire to wield power over the fundamental forces of nature, found fertile ground in the geopolitical climate of the Cold War. Imagine the ultimate weapon, not a bomb that destroys cities, but a force that can cripple an enemy's agriculture, trigger devastating floods, or conjure droughts that starve populations, all without a single visible soldier or a declared act of war. The atmosphere, the shared sky that blankets us all, became the ultimate battlefield. The very air we breathe, the weather that sustains life, could be weaponized. This was the ultimate expression of control, a terrifying fusion of scientific capability and political paranoia. The pursuit of weather modification, cloaked in the guise of scientific advancement and national security, took on a sinister dimension. Governments, particularly the superpowers, locked in a global ideological struggle, began pouring resources into understanding and potentially weaponizing the weather. The potential for strategic advantage was immense. Imagine disrupting an enemy's supply lines with unseasonal blizzards, or destroying crops within targeted hailstorms. The implications for power, for dominance, were staggering. It represented an arrogance, a hubris, that believed humanity could not only understand but master the complex interconnected systems of the Earth's climate. This is where the libertarian skepticism truly takes root. When we speak of centralized control over something as fundamental, as ubiquitous, and as inherently chaotic as the weather, we are talking about an unprecedented level of power being vested in a select few. Who decides when and where it rains? Who bears the responsibility for unintended consequences? A drought in one region caused by bringing rain to another, or altered weather patterns that disrupt global ecosystems. The philosophical implications are staggering. Are we, in our quest for control, attempting to usurp the role of a higher power, or perhaps simply nature itself? This pursuit of playing God with the atmosphere is not merely a scientific endeavor, it is a moral and ethical minefield. It raises fundamental questions about liberty, about sovereignty, and about the inherent right of every individual to exist within a natural, unmanipulated environment. The historical trajectory, from ancient rain dances to the chilling prospect of weather warfare, reveals a consistent and increasingly dangerous human impulse, the desire for absolute control, and the potential for that desire to lead us down a path of unimaginable peril. Are you tired of feeling helpless when the world throws a curveball? Do you worry about supply chains and disruptions, extreme weather, or the instability of our times? Then you need to know about My Patriot Supply. We offer a wide range of delicious, nutritious, and storable food that's perfect for any emergency or just for everyday peace of mind. Our meals are designed for long-term storage, so you can stock up now and be prepared for whatever comes your way. Forget those bland, tasteless survival rations. My Patriot Supply offers a variety of delicious options that your whole family will enjoy, from hearty breakfasts to savory dinners. And with a shelf life of up to 25 years, you can rest assured that your investment is protected. I call it insurance you can eat. Don't rely on the government or corporations to take care of you in a crisis. Take control of your own security and independence with My Patriot Supply. DARPA's dark cloud, the military's obsession with environmental control. We've talked about the ancient impulse, the historical yearning to control the weather, but for that desire to truly bloom into a dangerous reality, it needed a catalyst. It needed funding, scientific rigor, and a driving force with the resources and the will to pursue such audacious and frankly terrifying ambitions. Enter DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. The acronym itself sounds like something plucked from a dystopian novel, a shadowy entity dedicated to ensuring America's technological superiority in matters of war and defense. And when it comes to this controlling the very environment we live in, DARPA has, historically and theoretically, been at the forefront of this unsettling pursuit. From a libertarian perspective, the very existence of DARPA is a red flag. It represents a concentration of power, a government agency operating largely outside public scrutiny, tasked with developing technologies that, by their very nature, will invariably be dual use, while presented to the public as advancements for national security or even civilian benefit. The underlying purpose is often to gain a strategic advantage, a euphemism for dominance over adversaries. And what domain is more fundamental, more universally impactful than weather itself? Think about it. Weather as a force multiplier. It's a chillingly pragmatic phrase, isn't it? Imagine a battlefield. Armies move, resources are transported, populations are reliant on predictable conditions. Now imagine you could disrupt that. You could summon fog, to obscure troop movements, create localized downpours to bog down enemy armor, or generate high winds to disrupt aerial operations. Or on a larger scale, you can engineer drought to cripple an enemy's agricultural output, starving their populace and destabilizing their government without firing a shot. This isn't science fiction. This is a logical, albeit terrifying, extension of military strategy when coupled with advanced scientific capabilities. The military has always understood that control over resources translates into power: oil, water, land. These have historically been contested territories. But what if you could control something even more pervasive, something that affects every single person on the planet, every nation, every ecosystem, the atmosphere, the sky, the weather? This is the ultimate frontier of control, and DARPA, with its mandate to push the boundaries of science and technology for military advantage, has been a key player in exploring this domain. We've seen glimpses, historical echoes of this pursuit, while often couched in more benign terms. Projects undertaken decades ago hint at the long-standing military interest in environmental manipulation. Project Popeye, for example, conducted during the Vietnam War, was a highly classified operation that involved cloud seeding over Ho Chi Minh Trail. The stated goal was to disrupt enemy supply lines by extending the monsoon season, increasing rainfall, and creating mud, thereby hindering troop and vehicle movement. While proponents might argue it was a limited tactical intervention, it represents a clear history clear historical instance of using weather modification technology for military objectives. It demonstrated that influencing the atmosphere, even in localized ways, was not only possible but deemed strategically valuable. Beyond specific operations, DARPA's research funding has likely flowed into countless theoretical and experimental avenues related to atmospheric science. The agency is known for funding high risk, high reward projects, the kind that might seem outlandish to the uninitiated, but hold the potential for paradigm shifting military applications. This could range from advanced atmospheric modeling to the development of novel aerosol dispersal technologies, from understanding ionospheric interactions to exploring ways to manipulate electromagnetic propagation through the atmosphere. Many of these research areas, while seemingly abstract, could have direct or indirect applications in weather modification or creating specific atmospheric conditions that serve a military purpose. The dual use nature of these technologies is a critical point of concern for anyone who values individual liberty and limited government. A weather radar system designed for storm prediction can also be used to monitor air traffic or even track troop movements. A sophisticated system for dispersing beneficial aerosols for agricultural purposes could, in theory, be adapted to disperse harmful agents or create specific atmospheric effects. DARPA's focus on innovation means they are constantly exploring the what ifs, and when the what ifs involve controlling fundamental natural forces, the potential for overreach and unintended consequences is astronomical. Who is accountable when a DARPA funded experiment designed to, say, dissipate fog for naval operation inadvertently triggers a drought 100 miles away? The libertarian answer is clear. Such power vested in an unaccountable agency is inherently dangerous and a violation of natural rights. This obsession with controlling the environment reflects a broader governmental tendency, amplified by agencies like DARPA, to micromanage and militarize every aspect of life. From surveillance technologies that erode privacy to economic policies that stifle individual enterprise, the trend is towards centralized control. The weather, the very air we breathe, is the ultimate prize in this quest for total dominance. If you can control the weather, you can control agriculture, you can influence populations, you can dictate the terms of conflict and survival. It's an aspiration that flies directly in the face of the principles of self reliance and individual liberty that are so vital. The very idea that a government agency would actively pursue the capability to engineer weather for military purposes, regardless of the stated intentions or the scientific justifications, should send a chill down the spine of anyone who values freedom. It signifies a willingness to tamper with complex natural systems with potentially irreversible consequences, all in the name of strategic advantage. DARPA's historical and theoretical involvement in this arena serves as a stark reminder that the pursuit of power can lead even the most advanced societies down paths that are both ethically bankrupt and existentially perilous. It's a testament to the hubris that believes humanity can and should bend the fundamental forces of nature to its will, creating a dark cloud of military ambition over our shared skies. Chemtrails, the visible lines of suspicion. So we've looked at the history, the military ambitions. Now let's talk about what many of you are seeing, what many of you are talking about. Those lines, those persistent, spreading, crisscrossing lines painted across the sky. They call them chemtrails. And if you're like me, if you've ever stopped to really look up, you know there's something fundamentally different about them compared to the fleeting contrails of yesteryear. The official story, the one peddled by mainstream media and accepted by the complacent majority, is simple. Contrails, condensation trails, water vapor from jet engines, freezing instantly in the frigid upper atmosphere, forming ice crystals that we see as white lines. They appear, they linger for a bit, and then they dissipate like breath on a cold window. Perfectly normal, harmless, nothing to see here. But what if those lines don't dissipate? What if they spread out like sickly white plumes, merging into a hazy, overcast sky that wasn't predicted? What if you see planes flying in grid patterns, creating a vast interwoven network across the blue? What if these trails appear at altitudes where contrails traditionally shouldn't form or persist? What if, on days when these trials are heavy, these trails are heavy, people report unusual symptoms, headaches, respiratory issues, fatigue? This is where the suspicion, the countercultural skepticism, truly takes hold. For proponents of the chemtrail theory, these aren't just water vapor. They are visible evidence of a massive ongoing atmospheric spraying program an operation conducted with deliberate intent at scale and without public consent or knowledge. The question then becomes why. The alleged purposes are as varied as they are disturbing, and each taps into a deep seated distrust of authority. Let's break down some of the most commonly discussed theories. Geoengineering/climate control. This is perhaps the most frequently cited justification, often presented with a veneer of scientific legitimacy. The idea is that these spraying programs are part of a global effort to combat climate change, perhaps by deploying aerosols designed to reflect sunlight and cool the planet. Sounds noble, right? Except who decided this was a solution? Who authorized this planetary scale experiment? And what are the long term consequences of artificially manipulating the Earth's albedo? Libertarianism teaches us that such centralized top-down control over fundamental systems without the consent of the governed and with the potentially catastrophic unforeseen outcomes is anathema to freedom. Population control. A darker, more sinister motive suggests is that these aerosols contain biological or chemical agents designed to affect human health, perhaps to reduce fertility, induce illness, or even introduce a slow-acting toxin into the population. This theory resonates with those who believe governments have historically engaged in unethical human experimentation or sought to control populations through various means, from forced sterilization programs to the weaponization of disease. The lack of transparency fuels the fear. If they're spraying something that affects our health, shouldn't we know? Agriculture or environmental manipulation. Some theories suggest the spraying is intended to alter soil composition, affect crop yields, or even poison the environment to control food supplies or maintain dependence on specific agricultural industries. This aligns with concerns about corporate control over food production and the potential for powerful entities to manipulate the very basis of our sustenance. Surveillance and communication. Another avenue of thought posits that aerosols are designed to create a conductive layer in the atmosphere, enhancing or enabling advanced surveillance technologies or facilitating military communication systems, perhaps even acting as a form of radar enhancement for ground based or airborne platforms. The idea of a constant, invisible electronic grid being laid over us all is a potent one. Mind control or behavioral modification. The most extreme theories suggest the aerosols contain psychoactive chemicals or electromagnetic wave altering particles designed to influence mood, suppress dissent, or induce a state of apathy and compliance within the population. While seemingly far fetched, it taps to a primal fear of losing control of one's mind and will. What binds these diverse theories together is a profound lack of trust in the institutions that govern us and the information they provide. When official explanations feel inadequate, when observable phenomena contradict the narrative, people will seek alternative explanations. In the age of the internet, those alternative explanations can spread like wildfire, connecting dots that may or may not be truly connected, but which will resonate with a pre existing suspicion of hidden agendas. From a counterculture and libertarian standpoint, the chemtrail phenomenon is not just about what is being sprayed, but who is spraying it and why, and what it says about the relationship between the individual and the state. The core issue is accountability and transparency. If governments and their affiliated agencies are conducting large scale atmospheric experiments, even under the guise of environmental protection or national security, the public has a right to know. The very act of doing so without open disclosure, without public debate, and without a clear demonstrable benefit that outweighs the inherent risks and infringements on our environment and potentially our health is an act of overreach. It is a violation of the principle that individuals should have control over their immediate environment. They should not be subjected to undisclosed environmental manipulation. The official denials are, of course, consistent. Contrails are natural. Any unusual atmospheric events are due to complex weather patterns. Yet, for those who are paying attention, the evidence on the ground, the strange persistence and spreading patterns, the grid like formations, the anecdotal reports of ill health, continues to pile up. The libertarian mind is inherently skeptical of authority, particularly when that authority attempts to obscure its actions or dismiss legitimate public concerns. When the narrative is controlled, when dissent is labeled as conspiracy, it is a sign that something is being hidden. The question of what chemtrails are ultimately is a question of control. Who controls the air we breathe? Who controls the information we receive? Who controls the narrative about our own environment? The persistent spreading lines in the sky above serve as a visible, tangible manifestation of anxieties about power. secrecy, and the potential for our government and the hidden forces behind them to conduct operations that can impact us all without our consent. It's a call to wake up, to question, to look up, to demand answers about what is truly happening above our heads. Because if they can control the sky, what else can they control? We've been talking about the skies, about manipulation of our atmosphere, but what about the water we drink? If they can alter the air, what's to stop them from compromising our water sources? In a world of increasing contamination, accidental or intentional, can you truly trust your municipal water supply? Introducing Alexa Pure Water Filtration. Take control of your hydration with systems designed for self sufficiency and health. Alexa Pure removes contaminants, ensuring your water is pure, clean, and safe, free from reliance on potentially compromised systems. Don't leave your family's health to chance. Alexa Pure provides reliable, independent access to clean water, safeguarding your freedom and well being. Whether it's a countertop filter or a whole house system, Alexa Pure empowers you to reclaim your water independence. Geoengineering, playing God with the planet's thermostat. We've established the historical context, the military ambitions, and the visible anomalies that many interpret as chemtrails. Now, let's pivot. A concept that takes these anxieties and amplifies them exponentially. Geoengineering. This isn't about just modifying weather for tactical advantage anymore. This is about large scale, deliberate intervention in the Earth's entire climate system. It's humanity, or at least a select powerful segment of it, attempting to play God with the planet's thermostat. And from a counterculture libertarian perspective, it represents the ultimate zenith of a centralized control, a terrifying embodiment of everything we stand against. The official narrative, driven by the growing alarm over anthropogenic climate change, presents geoengineering as a potential last resort. Faced with what they deem as an existential threat, scientists and policymakers are seriously exploring ways to actively manage the global climate. The proposals generally fall into two broad categories: solar radiation management, SRM. This is the approach that most directly intersects with chemtrail discussions. The core idea is to reflect a small percentage of sunlight back into space, thereby cooling the planet. The most frequently discussed method is stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI. Imagine fleets of aircraft or high altitude balloons, or even artillery shells, deliberately dispersing fine particles like sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. These particles, mimicking the cooling effect of large volcanic eruptions, would theoretically create a veil to dim the sun's rays. Other SRM ideas include maritime cloud brightening, spraying sea salt aerosols to make clouds more reflective, or using space based mirrors. Carbon dioxide removal, CDR. This category focuses on reducing the concentration of greenhouse gases already in the atmosphere. Techniques range from the more natural approaches like afforestation and improved land management to more technologically intensive methods such as direct air capture (DAC), which involves machines that chemically extract CO2 from the air, and bioenergy with carbon capture and storage (BECCS), where biomass is burned for energy and the resulting CO2 is captured and stored underground. On the surface, these protocols and proposals are often framed with the best intentions, saving humanity from a climate catastrophe. Proponents argue that the risks of unchecked climate change, rising sea levels, extreme weather events, mass extinctions, are so dire that even risky geoengineering solutions must be considered. They speak of scientific necessity, of calculated risks, and potential global benefits. But they've been saying this shit for like forever, for decades. It's not really appearing like it they said. But peel back that veneer, and the libertarian alarm bell should be deafening. This is the ultimate form of central planning. It's not just about managing a national economy or regulating individual behavior. It's about taking the reins of the planet's most complex, interconnected, and vital life support system. Who decides when and how to deploy these technologies? Who bears the immense responsibility for the unintended consequences? Consider the implications of stratospheric aerosol injection. This isn't a gentle nudge, it's a planetary intervention. While the goal might be to cool the globe, the reality is that weather and climate are incredibly intricate, chaotic systems. Regional disparities. A uniform cooling effect globally is unlikely. Some regions might experience significant cooling, while others might see little change or even experience altered rainfall patterns. What if strategic aerosol injection, intended to mitigate global warming, triggers devastating droughts in one part of the world while causing floods in another. Who then pays the reparations? Who is held accountable? The potential for geopolitical conflict is immense. A nation experiencing crop failure due to artificially induced drought might view the nation deploying strategic aerosol injections as an aggressor. Ecological disruption. A reduction in sunlight, even a small one, could have profound effects on agriculture and natural ecosystems. Photosynthesis relies on sunlight. Reduced solar radiation could impact crop yields, disrupt food chains, and alter the delicate balance of plant and animal life. Are we prepared to sacrifice ecological diversity and food security on the altar of climate management? Ozone layer depletion. Many of the proposed aerosols, particularly sulfates, could potentially interact with atmospheric chemistry in ways that damage the ozone layer, leaving us more vulnerable to harmful UV radiation. Moral hazard. The very existence of a potential techno fix, like geoengineering, can reduce the incentive for governments and industries to address the root cause of climate change. The burning of fossil fuels and excessive carbon emissions, if that even is what's the reality of the situation. It's a dangerous form of escapism, a way to avoid necessary but challenging societal changes. And then there's the question of governance. Who gets to make these decisions? Will it be a UN committee, a consortium of powerful nations, a handful of wealthy corporations? The very notion of global climate regime empowered to unilaterally alter the atmospheric conditions for billions of people is a libertarian nightmare. It concentrates an unprecedented level of power over our weather, our food, our very environment, into the hands of an elite few. It strips away the autonomy of nations and individuals, making us all subject to decisions made far away by people we didn't choose, with agendas we may not understand. This is not about helping nature, it's about subduing it. It's about imposing human will on a scale previously unimaginable. It's the ultimate expression of the command and control mentality that pervades modern governance. From the perspective of liberty, this is tyranny by another name. It is the imposition of a global diktat enforced by technology that overrides natural processes and individual sovereignty. It seeks to manage the planet, not in partnership with it, but as its master. This is a profound ethical violation, a hubristic overreach that seeks to substitute complex, evolved natural systems with blunt, potentially devastating technological intervention. The proposals for carbon dioxide removal, while seemingly less directly interventionist, also carry significant implications for control. Who owns the captured carbon? Who decides where it's stored? What are the long-term environmental impacts of large-scale DAC facilities or massive bioenergy plantations? These technologies, while potentially addressing a real problem, also open new avenues for governmental and corporate control over resources and land use. The libertarian critique of geoengineering is rooted in a deep skepticism of concentrated power, and an unwavering belief in individual liberty and the right to a natural, unadulterated environment. Geoengineering, particularly SRM, represents the ultimate form of external control, a potential mechanism for covertly shaping the world to the will of a hidden few. It's a scenario where the sky itself becomes a tool of oppression, where the weather we experience is not a product of natural cycles, but a carefully orchestrated performance designed for purposes unknown and with consequences we may not survive. It's a terrifying possibility that the very systems designed to save us can become the instruments of our ultimate subjugation, imposing a new atmospheric tyranny upon us all. In an age of constant surveillance, of potential infrastructure collapse, of weather events that can cripple our communication network, how do you ensure you can still connect? How do you maintain your freedom of speech, your ability to reach your loved ones, or coordinate resources when the grid goes down? You need the up phone by unplugged satellite. This isn't your carrier pigeon, and it's certainly not your smartphone that relies on vulnerable cell towers. The up phone utilizes satellite technology, meaning it works virtually anywhere on Earth. No cell service, no problem. Power outage doesn't matter. For the free thinker, the self-reliant individual, the up phone is essential. It's your direct line, untethered from the systems that can be controlled or compromised. Keep your independence, maintain your privacy, and ensure you can communicate when it matters most. The hidden hand, unintended consequences, and unseen agendas. We've touched upon the overt dangers of geoengineering, the sheer hubris of trying to manage global climate, but the true libertarian horror lies not just in the potential for overt control, but in the insidious creep of unintended consequences and the gnawing suspicion of unseen agendas. When you start tinkering with systems as complex and interconnected as the Earth's atmosphere, you are not just pulling levers, you are unleashing forces that defy prediction. And who benefits most from such unpredictable chaos, or from the solutions that inevitably arise from it? Let's revisit the idea of stratospheric aerosol injection. The scientific community itself is divided, not just on whether it should be done, but on whether it can be done predictably. Models can simulate outcomes, but the atmosphere is a living, breathing, inherently chaotic entity. Think of it like trying to fine tune a massive, intricate clockwork mechanism with a sledgehammer. Every adjustment, even if intended to correct one perceived imbalance, could create a cascade of unforeseen effects elsewhere. Imagine a scenario. A powerful nation or coalition of nations decides to implement a global cooling program via strategic aerosol injection. They believe they are saving the planet from warming. But what if, due to miscalculation or the inherent unpredictability of atmospheric dynamics, their actions inadvertently trigger a persistent drought in a critical agricultural region? Or what if they cause a significant reduction in polar ice melt, but at the cost of disrupting major ocean currents that regulate global weather patterns? Or perhaps the aerosol themselves, designed to be inert, are found to have long-term toxic effects on ecosystems or human health that weren't detected in initial limited trials. These aren't just hypothetical what ifs. These are the predictable outcomes of attempting to impose top down control on complex natural systems. From a libertarian viewpoint, this is precisely why such power should never be centralized. The principle of subsidiarity, that decisions should be made at the lowest possible level, is fundamentally violated when a global thermostat is placed in the hands of a few. Individual liberty includes the right to experience the natural environment as it is, not as some distant authority deems it to be. But beyond the unintended consequences, there's the ever present shadow of hidden agendas. With massive technological interventions proposed, especially those with global implications and immense potential for power, it's naive to assume pure altruistic motives are at play. Think about who stands to gain. Geopolitical advantage. Could a nation use its geoengineering capabilities as a form of leverage or even coercion? Imagine threatening to withhold cooling from a rival nation, or conversely punishing them with altered weather patterns if they don't comply with certain political demands. The potential for weather warfare, conducted not with bombs but with atmospheric manipulation, is a chilling prospect. Economic control. Industries involved in geoengineering technologies, the manufacture of dispersal systems, the producers of aerosols, the developers of carbon capture technology, stand to gain trillions. Could the perceived necessity of geoengineering be manufactured or exacerbated to create markets for these technologies and consolidate economic power? The illusion of control. For governments and global institutions, the ability to manage climate change, even if imperfectly, offers a powerful narrative of competence and control. It allows them to present themselves as saviors, justifying their existence and their expansion of power, while potentially deflecting blame from their own past policies or failures. Social engineering. In more extreme theories, the aerosols or atmospheric modifications could be designed not just to alter the weather, but to subtly influence human behavior, perhaps to induce complacency, dampen dissent, or promote a desired psychological state across populations. The idea of invisible forces shaping our thoughts and feelings is a classic theme in the countercultural narratives for a reason. The lack of transparency surrounding these proposals is itself a massive red flag. While research is published, the actual implementation, if it were to occur, would likely be shrouded in secrecy, justified by national security or the urgency of a climate crisis. This secrecy breeds distrust, and rightfully so. When decisions impacting the fundamental life support systems of the planet are made behind closed doors, it is the antithesis of democratic accountability and individual liberty. From our perspective, geoengineering is not a solution. It is a symptom of a deeper problem, the belief that centralized power, wielded by unaccountable entities and bureaucrats, can effectively and ethically manage complex natural systems. It represents the ultimate form of societal engineering, an attempt to impose artificial order on the organic processes of the earth. It bypasses the consent of the governed, ignores the wisdom of natural resilience, and prioritizes control over freedom. We are being told that the only way to save ourselves from the consequences of past actions is to engage in even more radical, potentially irreversible interventions. This is the logic of the desperate, the logic of totalitarianism. It robs humanity of its agency. It connects to the natural world and its inherent right to exist within an unmanipulated environment. The hidden hand that guides geoengineering could well be motivated by profit, power, or a misguided sense of control, but its touch is felt by everyone, whether they know it or not, and the consequences, intended or otherwise, are a threat to the very foundations of a free and self-reliant existence. When the grid fails, whether due to storms, cyber attack, or simply neglect, your modern conveniences can vanish in an instant. Lights out, refrigeration stops, communication dies. But what if you could generate your own power, cleanly and reliably, no matter what happens to the infrastructure around you? That's the promise of 4 Patriot solar generators. These aren't just battery packs. They're portable power stations that harness the sun's energy to keep your essential devices running. Power your phone, your fridge, your medical equipment, your lights, all without relying on gasoline, without the noise, and without the vulnerability of the traditional power grid. In a world where centralized systems are increasingly fragile, self sufficiency is paramount. A 4 Patriot solar generator is more than just a backup. It's a statement of independence. It's your personal power plant, ready when you need it most. Don't be left in the dark. Secure your energy freedom. We've looked into the historical context, the military ambitions, the visual anomalies that many interpret as chemtrails, and the broad strokes of geoengineering. Now let's pivot to a concept that underpins much of this, the weaponization of weather itself. This isn't just about modifying weather for tactical advantage anymore. It's about leveraging atmospheric control as a strategic tool to dominate, to destabilize, and to subjugate. And from a counterculture libertarian perspective, it represents a terrifying evolution in the methods of warfare and control, extending the battlefield directly into our backyards. The idea of using weather as a weapon is not new. For centuries, military strategists have understood the immense impact of weather on operations, hindering troop movements with fogs and blizzards, or aiding invasions with favorable winds. But the advent of advanced science and technology has transformed this from a matter of exploiting natural conditions to actively creating them. The potential to engineer droughts, conjure floods, or unleash hyperstorms is no longer confined to the realm of science fiction. It is a documented area of research, and many suspect of clandestine development. The international community has, at least on paper, recognized this danger. The Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques, ENMOD, adopted by the United Nations in 1977, sought to ban the use of environmental modification methods that could cause widespread, long lasting, or severe effects as a means of warfare. This treaty specifically targets techniques that could manipulate weather patterns, climate, or the Earth's systems for hostile purposes. Think creating artificial earthquakes, altering ocean currents, or crucially, modifying weather and climate. However, as with many such agreements, the devil is in the details, and the spirit of the law often lags far behind the advancements of technology. ENMOD prohibits hostile use, but what constitutes hostile, and how do you prove intent when the effects are seemingly natural or attributed to climate change? The treaty's effectiveness is debatable, especially when considering the opacity surrounding military research and development. The very existence of such a convention, though, acknowledges the inherent danger and desire among nations to prevent a new arms race fought not with bullets, but with atmospheric manipulation. From a libertarian viewpoint, the ENMOD Convention, while well intentioned, highlights a fundamental flaw, the belief that governments can effectively regulate or control technologies that inherently grant immense power. The impulse to control the weather for strategic advantage is deeply embedded within the military industrial complex's drive for quote unquote full spectrum dominance. This concept, popularized by military thinkers, refers to achieving superiority across all dimensions of warfare: land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace, and increasingly the electromagnetic and environmental spectra as well. Weather modification technologies fit perfectly in this paradigm. Imagine the strategic advantages: agricultural warfare. Inducing prolonged droughts in an adversary's breadbasket region could cripple their economy, cause widespread famine, and destabilize their government, all without a direct military confrontation. Conversely, creating unseasonal torrential rains could destroy crops, disrupt harvests, and trigger devastating floods. Disruption of operations, creating a persistent fog, bank, or severe thunderstorm over an enemy's airfield or naval bases could ground their aircraft. Prevent resupply missions and severely hamper their ability to project power. Similarly, generating intense electromagnetic interference through manipulated atmospheric conditions could disrupt enemy communications and radar systems. Economic subversion. Beyond direct agricultural impact, altering weather patterns could affect energy supplies, i.e., reducing wind for wind farms, increasing cloud cover to diminish solar power generation, impact tourism, or even manipulate commodity prices by affecting harvest and resource availability globally. Creating refugee flows. Engineered environmental disasters, such as widespread flooding or desertification, can force mass migrations, overwhelming neighboring nations and creating humanitarian crises that can be exploited for geopolitical gain. These aren't merely theoretical possibilities. Historical documents and declassified reports hint at explorations into these very areas. The potential for weather warfare offers a tempting, albeit terrifying, avenue for asymmetric advantage. A nation with advanced weather modification capabilities could potentially engage in acts of aggression that are difficult to attribute, deniable, and devastatingly effective, all while maintaining plausible deniability. The danger, however, extends far beyond the battlefield. When these technologies are developed and deployed covertly, or even overtly under the guise of climate mitigation, they inevitably bleed into civilian life. The chemtrail phenomenon, as discussed earlier, is a prime example of how public suspicion arises when everyday citizens observe atmospheric anomalies that contradict official explanations. The fear is that these technologies, while perhaps initially intended for foreign adversaries or large-scale environmental management, could easily be repurposed and misapplied against domestic populations. Consider the implication for individual liberty and national sovereignty, loss of autonomy. If weather patterns can be manipulated, then the very environment we depend on for survival, our food, our water, or safety, is no longer a stable natural constant. It becomes a variable, subject to the control of external forces, eroding our fundamental autonomy. Coercion and control. Imagine a scenario where a government facing internal dissent subtly alters the climate in certain regions to increase hardship, thereby discouraging protest or fostering compliance through environmental pressure, perhaps using weather as a reward for punishment or punishment for geopolitical allies or adversaries. Erosion of sovereignty. If one nation can unilaterally alter the weather that affects another, the very concept of national borders and sovereignty becomes blurred. A weather war could destabilize entire regions, creating dependency and subjugation without overt invasion. Unforeseen global impact. The atmosphere is a global commons. An intervention designed to benefit one region or nation could lead and have catastrophic unforeseen consequences for others, leading to international disputes and a breakdown in cooperation. The military industrial complex, driven by its insatiable hunger for new technologies, and its perpetual quest for control, sees weather modification not just as a weapon, but as the ultimate tool of dominance. It's a way to fight wars without traditional combat, to exert influence without overt force, and to manage populations by controlling the very environment they inhabit. This aligns with the libertarian concern that unchecked power, particularly military and governmental power, inevitably seeks expansion and control over every facet of life. The question then becomes, are the atmospheric phenomena we observe today the results of well intentioned but flawed geoengineering attempts, the byproduct of military research, or deliberate acts of environmental warfare, perhaps conducted against populations deemed unruly or as a means of geopolitical pressure? The lack of transparency and the consistent dismissal of public concerns by official channels only fuels these suspicions. For those who value freedom, who believe in the self-reliance and the right to an unmanipulated existence, the weaponization of weather represents one of the most profound threats to our liberty and our future. It's a chilling reminder that when power seeks to control everything, even the sky above, is not sacred. The unseen hand, control, profit, and the erosion of reality. We've journeyed through the history of our desire to control the weather, the military's deep-seated interests, the visible anomalies that spark our suspicion, and the terrifying potential of geoengineering. Now we must bring these disparate threats together and confront the ultimate implication. What does it all mean when this very sky above us, the air we breathe, the climate that dictates our lives, can potentially be manipulated by unseen hands? The answer from our perspective is profoundly disturbing. It signifies the centralization of power on an unprecedented scale, the potential for unimaginable profits for those who can control these nascent technologies, and a profound existential erosion of our shared reality. If the weather itself can be engineered, if our skies can be sprayed for purposes unknown, then what truly is beyond manipulation? Our food supply, our water, our very perception of what is real. This brings us to the concept of soft kill or silent weapons. These are not necessarily technologies that obliterate in a single dramatic act of destruction. Instead, they are tools that can achieve strategic objectives through the slow, insidious degradation of the opponent's capabilities and societal stability. Imagine, if you will, a nation that can subtly alter rainfall patterns over a rival's agricultural heartland. Not a sudden deluge that washes away fields, but a persistent unseasonal dryness that slowly saps the soil, reduces yields after year, and leads to economic hardship, social unrest, and mass migration. Or perhaps the introduction of atmospheric agents that don't kill outright, but lead to widespread malaise, chronic illnesses, and a general decline in public health and productivity. These are not the shock and awe tactics of traditional warfare. They are the slow acting poisons delivered through the air we breathe, undermining a society from within without overt aggression. This is where the core libertarian concern, the fundamental question of who benefits, becomes paramount. We discussed weather modification, geoengineering, and atmospheric interventions. We're not talking about abstract scientific principles in a vacuum. We're talking about immense power, and power by its very nature tends to concentrate. Who stands to gain from the ability to control global weather? It is not the common man, the farmer, the individual trying to make a living. It is those at the apex of the power structures, the governments that seek strategic advantage, the corporations that stand to profit from new technologies, the elites who crave an ever tighter grip on the reins of global control. Consider the economic incentives. Trillions of dollars are potentially at stake in the development and deployment of geoengineering solutions. The companies that can develop and sell atmospheric aerosol dispersal systems, the producers of specialized seeding agents, the architects of complex climate models, the engineers of massive carbon capture facilities. These are the beneficiaries. And when immense profit is on the table, the narrative surrounding the necessity of these technologies can easily be shaped, amplified, and even manufactured. Is the drive to quote unquote save the planet a genuine response to an existential threat? Or is it a carefully constructed justification to seize control of a planetary system and reap enormous financial reward? This leads us to a critical erosion of what we perceive as reality. If our weather is no longer a natural phenomenon but a managed system, if the blue sky we see might be a deliberate haze of reflective particles, if the rain that falls is a consequence of calculated intervention rather than natural cycles, then our fundamental connection to the natural world is severed. We are no longer observers of nature, we are subjects of its artificial simulation. This manufactured reality is a potent tool of control. It fosters dependency, it breeds confusion, and it makes dissent harder when the very ground rules of existence are fluid and dictated by an unseen authority. The libertarian ideal is built on individual autonomy, self-reliance, and the inherent right to freedom from undue external control. When governments and powerful entities claim the right to manipulate the atmosphere, they are encroaching on the most fundamental aspect of these principles. They are asserting control over a shared resource that belongs to no one and everyone, and by doing so, they diminish the freedom and autonomy of every individual. The right to breathe clean air, to experience natural weather patterns, to have a predictable environment for agriculture and life. These are not trivial matters. They are the bedrock upon which free societies are built. Therefore, the imperative for us, for anyone who values liberty and critical thinking, is clear. We must cultivate discernment. We must question the official narratives, not out of a conspiratorial urge, but out of a deep seated skepticism towards concentrated power and a commitment to truth. We must hone our ability to distinguish between genuine natural phenomena and potential engineered outcomes. This requires critical thinking, an open mind, and a willingness to examine evidence that contradicts the mainstream consensus. Furthermore, we must embrace and advocate for self-reliance. If the systems that govern our environment are suspect, if the air and water are potentially compromised, then we must build our own resilience. This means securing our own food supplies through local sustainable agriculture, purifying our own water, generating our own power, and maintaining independent communication channels. It means reducing our dependence on centralized systems that are vulnerable to manipulation, failure, or outright control. Resistance in this context does not necessarily mean violent confrontation. It means intellectual resistance, refusing to accept the dictated narrative. It means practical resistance, building independent systems that bypass the controlled infrastructure. It means vocal resistance, asking the difficult questions, sharing information, and raising awareness about the potential for environmental and societal manipulation. As we close this segment, let's leave you with a final unsettling thought. If they can control the weather, if they can engineer the atmosphere, if they can shape the very air we breathe, what does that say about the reality we inhabit? Are we living in a world that is truly natural, or one that has been meticulously, subtly, and perhaps malevolently designed? In an era of unprecedented events and unpredictable events, are you truly in control of your own power supply? The centralized grid is vulnerable. Storms, cyber attacks, even deliberate manipulation could leave you in the dark. Don't be a victim. It's time to embrace energy independence with 4 Patriot solar generators. These aren't just backup batteries, they're your personal power source, harnessing the sun's free energy to keep your essential devices running. Imagine powering your fridge, medical equipment, communication devices, all without relying on a vulnerable centralized system. A 4 Patriot solar generator means freedom from reliance. It's about taking control, ensuring your lights stay on, and maintaining your autonomy even when the world outside is in chaos. Be prepared, be resilient, be free. Conclusion. The sky is not the limit, it's the control. So we've reached the end of our journey into the unsettling world of weather modification, chemtrails, and DARPA. We've traced the historical ambition to control the skies, from ancient rituals to modern science. We've examined DARPA's shadowy role, its pursuit of technologies that blur the lines between defense and domination. And we've confronted the chemtrail phenomenon, the visible manifestation of a deeper unease about who controls the very air we breathe. We've seen how the desire to manipulate the weather, whether for military advantage, climate control, perhaps more sinister purposes, poses a profound threat to individual liberty. When governments and corporations claim the right to engineer our environment, they are asserting control over a shared resource, diminishing our autonomy and eroding our connection to the natural world. The dangers of geoengineering are immense. The potential for unintended consequences, for regional disparities, for ecological disruption is a gamble with the planet itself, and the concentration of power in the hands of a few is a recipe for tyranny, a violation of the fundamental principles of self-reliance and individual freedom. As libertarians and free thinkers and critical thinkers, our response must be vigilance, skepticism, and a commitment to truth. We must question the official narrative, demand transparency, and resist the seductive allure of centralized control. We must cultivate self-sufficiency, securing our own food, water, power, and communication, reducing our dependence on systems that can be manipulated or compromised. The struggle for freedom is perpetual, is a battle against the forces of control, against those who seek to dominate not only our lives, but the very air we breathe. The truth is out there, hidden in plain sight, in the persistent lines across the sky, in the whispers of conspiracy, in the unease that gnaws at our souls. It is up to each one of us to seek it, to question it, and to defend our right to a natural, unmanipulated existence. Until next time, keep watching the skies, and remember, sometimes the most unbelievable truths are hidden in the most obvious places. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I'm the cigarette smoking man. We're gonna win.
Thank you.